It will no longer be possible for me to give so much of my time and energies to the charities and issues for which I care so deeply.
At 75, King Charles has carried not only the crown, but also the heavy weight of secrets buried deep within the monarchy. For years, whispers of scandal and hidden truths have haunted the royal family.
King Charles has finally blocked Prince Harry's return to working royal life,
Fueling speculation that refused to fade. Now Charles has finally broken his silence, confirming a secret so powerful it could reshape how the world views the crown. This isn't just about history, it's about legacy, loyalty, and truth. So, what long-guarded revelation did Charles finally confess after decades of silence? Diana's enduring shadow and the burden on Charles. Even decades after her tragic and sudden death, Princess Diana's presence remained unforgettable.
The princess who spent her life in the relentless glare of the public eye died in a speeding car in Paris, apparently trying to evade pursuing photographers.
Refusing to fade from the hearts and minds of people around the world. Across continents and generations, she transcended the role of a royal figure.
Do you think you'll ever be queen?
No, I don't. No.
Why do you think that?
I'd like to be a queen of people's hearts, in people's hearts.
Becoming a living symbol whose memory was deeply etched into millions of lives. Her warmth, genuine compassion, and rare ability to make everyone feel noticed and valued were the qualities that lingered most vividly in public consciousness. Diana's gentle smile, spontaneous acts of kindness, and unwavering dedication to her charitable causes wove a legacy that seemed impervious to time. Through these enduring impressions, she had become more than a princess. She had become eternal, an everlasting icon of humanity and grace. Each year, as the anniversary of her passing approached, Kensington Palace transformed into a quiet sanctuary of remembrance. Crowds would gather outside the gates, leaving fresh flowers that filled the air with scent.
A solemn anniversary. 24 years after Princess Diana's death, people are remembering her life.
Lighting flickering candles that cast soft glows along the pathways, and placing handwritten notes heavy with love, grief, and longing. Strangers would pause in silence, whispering her name, recalling the warmth of her smile, or sharing brief, fleeting memories of moments when she had touched their lives in ways they would never forget. These simple yet powerful gestures proved one truth. Diana was no longer just a princess taken too soon. She had become immortal in the hearts of those she inspired. Grief, however, is rarely gentle. While the world slowly learned to remember Diana with love instead of raw pain, for Charles, her memory remained a storm that raged ceaselessly within him. Society, the press, and the public continued to press him to acknowledge her importance, to openly honor the life and legacy she had left behind. It was no longer enough that William and Harry carried her torch. The world wanted to see their father step forward, to speak, to act, and to show his own respect and recognition. The pressure built relentlessly, like waves battering against a cliff, year after year. Headlines demanded action. Commentators urged acknowledgement. Everyone seemed to whisper the same words. He owes Diana that much. For Charles, the weight of expectation was heavy, constant, and unyielding. Even though his life with Camilla Parker Bowles had brought him comfort and a measure of personal happiness, he could not ignore Diana's enduring significance, not just to the family, but to the monarchy and to the public. The duality of his life weighed on him heavily. On one hand, he had found a partner who brought him peace. On the other, he carried the responsibility of honoring the woman who had changed him so profoundly. Privately, he confessed to trusted confidants, "It would be dishonest to pretend she didn't change me. She was, after all, the mother of my children." Those words echoed through his mind constantly, especially as he watched William and Harry continue to carry forward the light of her legacy. Yet speaking openly was fraught with risk. Charles feared ridicule, accusations of hypocrisy and distortion by the media. He worried about protesters at the palace gates, the sharp scrutiny of the public, and the enduring shadows of past scandals. Despite the danger, he understood one undeniable truth: silence would achieve nothing. Staying quiet would only let old wounds fester and deepen. To honor Diana properly, to acknowledge the past, he would have to confront it, and do so openly, despite the world watching his every move. Diana left a legacy that can never be forgotten. But is there more to her story that the public still doesn't know? If so, what is it, and how much does it weigh? Now let's uncover how King Charles finally faced decades of silence and revealed the truth about Diana. The moment of truth. The long-awaited moment of reckoning arrived quietly, yet it carried an immense weight that could not be ignored. A special outdoor memorial dedicated to honoring the life and legacy of Princess Diana. Unlike grand royal spectacles, this memorial was designed to be intimate and heartfelt, a celebration of Diana's remarkable influence through music, speeches, and personal tributes. Those present ranged from dignitaries and public figures to ordinary citizens whose admiration and love for Diana had never faded. For King Charles, however, the event meant far more than ceremony. It presented a choice: remain silent and let others tell Diana's story, or step forward and finally confront decades of secrecy with honesty and courage. The gravity of this decision weighed heavily on him in the weeks leading up to the memorial. Charles withdrew into the quiet corridors of his private study, pacing, rehearsing, and speaking aloud to walls that had witnessed his private doubts for years. Words felt inadequate, tones never right, pauses too long. "I must say something real," he confided to Camilla Parker Bowles one evening. "If I stand there and speak like a cold figure, I'll lose them forever." Camilla listened silently, understanding that this was a moment only he could navigate, a delicate balance between truth, remorse, and public expectation. During this period of reflection, Charles confronted the failings that had haunted him for decades. He remembered the tenderness he had withheld, the emotional distance that had defined much of his marriage, and the decisions that left lasting scars on Diana and their sons, William and Harry. He recalled Diana's courage, her generosity, and the humanitarian spirit that had captured the hearts of millions worldwide. Above all, he realized the public deserved to hear his truth, even if speaking it meant personal risk and political scrutiny. The day of the memorial arrived, and a sea of people filled the surrounding space, carrying photographs, flowers, and wearing images of Diana, their faces marked by anticipation, reverence, and lingering grief. The air seemed to hum with decades of emotion. When Charles stepped onto the understated stage, a platform intentionally simple to shift focus from ceremony to words, his presence carried the weight of years of private contemplation. His eyes, lined with decades of struggle and reflection, scanned the crowd. For a brief, suspended moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then, with a fragile yet deliberate voice, he began. "There is something I have carried for far too long. It has lived in shadows, whispered by others, but never admitted by me. Perhaps it is time I speak the truth." The crowd leaned forward, drawn by the gravity of his confession. What followed was unprecedented. Charles admitted, "I never truly loved Diana, not in the way a husband should love his wife, not as a monarch cloaked in authority, but as a man revealing his failures. I married her because it was expected. Duty and tradition left me little choice. I believed it was the path I had to follow, for the crown, for the country, and in doing so, I caused great pain, not only to Diana, but to our sons and to myself." He continued, acknowledging that his silence, once intended to protect, had only deepened the wounds. "I was raised to believe the crown came before all else. But that belief has a cost. That cost is humanity. That cost was my marriage, and that cost was Diana's peace of mind. Even as king, Charles admitted he could not undo the past, but for the first time, he faced it with honesty, laying bare decades of hidden truths for the world to hear. At last, Charles spoke, uncovering decades of hidden truths behind the palace walls. But what truly drove him to marry Diana? Were there unspoken tensions and past attachments that shaped a marriage the world believed was perfect? Let's delve into the story. The glittering facade and hidden tensions. The early 1980s brought an unprecedented spotlight to Buckingham Palace, casting every carefully rehearsed moment of royal life under intense scrutiny. Charles, at 32 and heir to the British throne, moved with the heavy weight of centuries of expectation pressing upon him. Every step he took, every carefully measured glance, and every public appearance carried significance far beyond personal choice. The press and public speculated endlessly. When would he finally marry? Who could truly capture his heart, and, in doing so, reassure a monarchy steeped in centuries of history and tradition? Each rumor, each whispered question, seemed amplified beneath the unrelenting gaze of photographers and the unyielding curiosity of a world fascinated by royalty. Then, like a dazzling comet streaking across the British social scene, Diana Spencer arrived. Young, radiant, and seemingly destined for a royal role, she glided through society with a grace and charm that felt almost magical. Every smile, every gesture, every subtle wave of her hand was captured with obsessive attention by the press. The nation held its collective breath when the engagement was announced, heralding it as destiny fulfilled, a fairy tale finally realized in the modern age. Newspapers celebrated her innocence, her elegance, and the warmth she seemed ready to bring to the crown. She was hailed as a symbol of hope and renewal, a young woman who could breathe life, stability, and compassion into the royal household. Around the world, people were captivated, imagining a storybook romance that seemed perfect in every way. Yet behind the gleaming photographs, the public smiles, and the ecstatic headlines, Buckingham Palace concealed a quieter, more complicated reality. Beneath the ceremonial splendor, the flawless appearances, and the glittering pageantry, an undercurrent of unease persisted, one almost imperceptible, yet impossible to ignore for those who sensed it. Charles's heart, despite the engagement, had never fully released its ties to Camilla Parker Bowles, a woman who had long occupied his thoughts and affections before Diana's arrival. Their quiet, discreet connection lingered like a shadow, subtly tainting what the world celebrated as a perfect engagement. At first, the rumors moved like whispers in the wind, slipping silently through Buckingham Palace's long, echoing corridors and spreading softly into the private conversations of elite social circles. Could Charles ever fully give his heart to another when the memory of a past love still haunted him? Was Diana, glowing and seemingly untouched by suspicion, stepping into a role already entwined with hidden attachments and unspoken emotions? Even the relentless cameras, trained to capture the slightest falter, the smallest flicker of doubt or unease, could not completely mask the tension that clung to him like a persistent shadow. Every measured step, every calculated glance, carried the weight of restrained longing, hidden truths, and the quiet pull of the heart's unresolved past. Amid all the adoration and celebration, a quiet, uncomfortable truth simmered within the palace walls. The fairy tale was far from simple. Beneath the sparkle of royalty lay longing, memories, and silent conflict. Threads that would slowly weave a story far more intricate, tragic, and compelling than anyone could have imagined. The complex tale of Charles, Diana, and Camilla had already begun, unfolding quietly behind gilded doors. It was a story of love, duty, secrecy, and heartbreak, one that would haunt the monarchy and fascinate the world for decades to come. Even as the public adored Diana and celebrated a union that appeared flawless, the hidden layers of human emotion were already shaping a narrative of sorrow, desire, and the delicate balance between personal longing and royal obligation. Behind the royal glamour lay hidden struggles, unspoken longing, and love that quietly haunted generations. But did Diana see her marriage as a mirage? And how did she endure such a painful reality? Now, let's dive into Diana's struggle within a royal marriage. Diana's hidden voice. Long before the world caught even a glimpse of the fractures in what seemed like a flawless royal marriage, Princess Diana had quietly begun recording the private truth of her life behind the gilded walls of Buckingham Palace. In 1991, with a courage that belied her youth, she reached out to journalist Andrew Morton, entrusting him with a series of candid audio recordings spoken in her own voice. These tapes would later form the backbone of Diana, her true story, and inspire the 2017 Netflix documentary Diana, in her own words. They were not mere confessions or attempts to scandalize the monarchy. They were a lifeline, a way for Diana to tell her story on her own terms, to speak beyond the sparkling facade of royal etiquette and ceremonial perfection. In these recordings, Diana revealed the quiet, persistent anguish that marked the early years of her marriage to Charles. She recounted, in vivid and painful detail, the moment she discovered a custom-made bracelet intended for Camilla Parker Bowles.
I walked into this man's office one day and I said, "Oh, what's in that parcel?" "Oh, he said you shouldn't look at that." I said, "Well, I'm going to look at it." So I opened it and there was a bracelet.
The bracelet was more than jewelry. It was a stark symbol that Charles's heart had never fully left the woman who had been a part of his life long before Diana herself had arrived. She spoke too of the letter she received from Camilla, congratulating her on the engagement. Outwardly polite and socially appropriate, these messages masked a lingering emotional connection that gnawed at Diana's peace of mind and cast subtle shadows over her new life as a princess. Every recollection, every intimate detail, conveyed a silent heartbreak that no royal smile or public appearance could ever fully hide. The Morton tapes painted a haunting portrait of a young woman caught between duty and despair. They chronicled the isolation, the quiet betrayals, and the emotional strain of sharing a marriage with a husband whose affections were divided. While Diana's 1995 Panorama interview later shocked the world with her unforgettable words, "There were 3 of us in this marriage." It was these earlier recordings that first exposed the raw depth of her suffering. They revealed the invisible weight she bore, the loneliness of palace corridors, the pressure of endless scrutiny, and the painful reality of a union bound by protocol rather than full-hearted love. By speaking openly in her own voice, Diana offered the world far more than a sensational scandal. She shared a profoundly human story, one that was raw, honest, and deeply relatable. No longer merely a distant, untouchable figure of fairy tale glamour, she became someone whose struggles, resilience, and courage could be felt and understood by millions across the globe. Through these intimate recordings, the public glimpsed the stark contrast between the sparkling spectacle of royal life and the private, often painful realities that unfolded behind closed palace doors. The tapes bridged the space between myth and truth, revealing that beneath crowns, pageantry, and ceremonial grandeur existed universal human emotions: love, heartbreak, longing, disappointment, and the quiet strength required to endure them. Diana's recordings were a window into her soul, a voice that refused to be silenced by the weight of tradition or expectation. They invited the world to see her as she truly was, a young woman navigating impossible pressures, trying to reconcile duty with desire, and bravely seeking a way to have her own story heard. Through her words, she left an enduring mark on history, reminding the world that even within the palace walls, hearts can ache, secrets can linger, and courage can shine in the most unexpected ways. Diana's heartbreak exposed secrets the world had never fully known. But how much could she endure before tragedy struck? Now let's uncover how her death tore apart the fairy tale and expose the crown's secret turmoil. Tragedy and public outrage. By the mid-1990s, the cracks in the royal marriage had widened so dramatically that they could no longer be hidden behind carefully crafted appearances. The glittering image of a perfect storybook union had begun to crumble, and Diana, once celebrated around the world as the radiant people's princess, now came to represent the quiet, human vulnerability that lay beneath the crown. Her struggles, which had previously been whispered only in palace corridors, could no longer remain secret. The fairy tale the public had long imagined, one of love, devotion, and harmony, was quietly unraveling, revealing the fragile reality of a monarchy caught between duty, desire, and unspoken heartache. Then, on the night of August 31st, 1997, the unimaginable occurred. News spread that Diana had been involved in a devastating car crash in Paris. The world was stunned, unable to grasp the sudden, shocking loss. Shock waves rippled across continents. Kensington Palace, usually a symbol of composed dignity and stoic order, became the epicenter of public grief. Its gates overflowed with flowers, creating a riot of colors and scents that spoke of sorrow, love, and disbelief. Streets across London and far beyond were filled with silent mourners. Candles flickered in memory, and countless hearts broke for a princess who had been taken far too soon. In that moment, it felt as though the world collectively paused, held in a quiet, universal grief. Amid the overwhelming sorrow, grief quickly mingled with anger. Charles, already under relentless media scrutiny, suddenly found himself at the center of public blame. Every decision he had made, every perceived failing, and every lingering attachment to Camilla Parker Bowles were dissected mercilessly in the global press. Newspapers that had once celebrated the romantic allure of the royal couple now examined Diana's struggles with ruthless attention, highlighting the hidden tensions that had defined their marriage. Millions who had adored the notion of a perfect monarchy were forced to confront a painful, inescapable truth. The fairy tale was over. The monarchy itself, long shielded by centuries of tradition, ceremony, and untouchable authority, faced its most intense scrutiny in modern history. Questions emerged not only about Charles's personal choices, but about the very institution he represented. The idea that behind Buckingham Palace's gilded doors lay heartbreak, emotional turmoil, and human flaws struck a chord worldwide. The public, once enchanted by pomp and pageantry, now demanded honesty, transparency, and accountability from the monarchy they had admired for generations. Meanwhile, Diana's young sons, William and Harry, were left to navigate a world of unimaginable loss. Their grief was raw and complicated, magnified by constant public attention and the shadow of a marriage that had never truly flourished. They mourned not just their mother, but the absence of a happy family life, all while under the intense glare of global scrutiny. The world watched them, collectively grieving with them, witnessing the ripple effects of Diana's absence, not just on her children, but on the monarchy itself, and on the very idea of royalty in the modern age. In those days, the story of Diana's life and tragic death became far more than a tale of sorrow. It became a mirror reflecting human fragility, a portrait of love restrained by duty, and a monarchy facing the immense pressure of surviving under the unblinking gaze of the world. Her story exposed the costs of tradition, the limits of public adoration, and the enduring, heartbreaking reality of a princess whose humanity shone far brighter than her crown. Her death did not just mark an ending, it unveiled secrets long kept in the shadows. But how would Charles navigate life after Diana's passing? Would he finally pursue his love for Camilla? Or would he honor the vows he once made? Now, let's delve into the untold story of Charles and Camilla's journey after Diana. Love, duty, and the long road to acceptance. In the years after Princess Diana's tragic death, Charles entered a period of life unlike any he had known before. He was a grieving widower, a father to 2 young sons, and the heir to one of the most scrutinized thrones in the world. Every action, every word, every appearance was weighed under the relentless gaze of the public and the press. Yet beneath this immense pressure, one reality remained impossible to ignore: his enduring feelings for Camilla Parker Bowles, the woman whose presence in his heart had never fully faded. Their connection, once concealed behind layers of secrecy, discretion, and royal duty, slowly began to emerge into the light. But it was no grand entrance, no dramatic statement to the world. It was a careful, measured reintroduction, one designed to respect history, memory, and public sentiment. Camilla did not appear as a replacement for Diana. Far from it. She returned as a companion, a steady, unwavering presence, gradually finding acceptance in a court still haunted by past losses and lingering shadows. Time became their ally. Patience, strategy, and subtlety defined every step they took together. Charles and Camilla moved like dancers on a tightrope, acutely aware of the shadows cast by history and the weight of public opinion. Every handshake, every glance, every understated gesture was noticed, analyzed, and dissected. Some watched with curiosity, others with skepticism, and many with cautious hope. The ghosts of Diana's legacy were never far away, a constant reminder of a marriage that had been far from perfect and a public that remained deeply invested in the past. In 2005, after decades of whispered rumors, careful planning, and cautious navigation of public sentiment, Charles and Camilla finally wed. The ceremony was deliberately quiet and understated, a stark contrast to the grandeur and spectacle of his first wedding, reflecting both respect for history and an awareness of lingering emotions surrounding Diana. Every detail seemed measured, balancing personal happiness with the weight of public expectation. For some, their union symbolized love triumphing at last, a long-awaited chance for 2 hearts to be together openly. For others, it stirred lingering sorrow, a reminder of broken promises, betrayal, and wounds that time had not fully healed, making the marriage a moment of both celebration and controversy. Inside the palace, their marriage represented a subtle yet profound turning point. Charles, long constrained by the rigid demands of duty, protocol, and centuries of expectation, began to embrace a new honesty about his heart. He realized that personal happiness did not have to clash with royal responsibility, that love could exist alongside tradition without undermining it. Camilla, who had faced years of scrutiny, gossip, and misunderstanding, finally claimed her rightful place beside him, not as a replacement for Diana, but as a steadfast companion whose patience, discretion, and unwavering support gradually won over both the palace and a skeptical public. Their union quietly reshaped perceptions, blending love, loyalty, and resilience. The story of Charles and Camilla is, at its heart, a tale of perseverance, patience, and careful navigation between love, duty, and public perception. It is a story shaped by decades of secrecy, longing, and subtle reconciliation between personal desire and national expectation. Their journey demonstrates that the human heart is capable of enduring love that, though delayed and fraught with obstacles, ultimately finds its way. Even against the backdrop of history, loss, and the shadow of a legacy that continues to captivate the world, their story is a reminder that love, honesty, and commitment can survive, and even thrive, amid the most complex circumstances. Beyond Charles and Camilla's enduring love after Diana's death, How did the world react to his confession? Most importantly, how will Diana's children cope with such a painful revelation? Let's find out. The shocking confession that shattered the monarchy. The world reacted almost immediately, a wave of shock and disbelief sweeping across continents. News networks replayed King Charles's stunning confession on endless loops, analyzing every word, every pause, every subtle change in tone. Newspapers, websites, and social media exploded with headlines screaming, "I never truly loved Diana." The words hit like lightning, reverberating through Britain and far beyond, sending ripples of astonishment, grief, and anger across the globe. Yet amid the outrage, a curious admiration for Diana herself resurfaced. Crowds flocked to Kensington Palace, clutching candles, bouquets, and handwritten notes, not only mourning her absence, but also celebrating her enduring legacy. In those quiet, tear-stained moments, the public was reminded that Diana was far more than a princess. She had become a symbol of compassion, courage, and a love that refused to fade. Commentators immediately weighed in. Some praised Charles' confession as a rare moment of royal honesty, a glimpse into the human heart behind the crown. Others condemned it, branding the admission selfish and cruel, reopening wounds that had never fully healed. For his family, for the nation, and for the world that had once adored the fairy tale image of the monarchy. Conversations erupted everywhere, from living rooms to international newsrooms, debating the delicate tension between duty and personal desire, between centuries-old protocol and the courage to embrace vulnerability. The monarchy, long viewed as untouchable, suddenly found itself under a microscope of unprecedented intimacy. Inside Buckingham Palace, a heavy tension hung in the air. Officials released carefully worded statements, hoping to contain the storm without inflaming it further. Yet the silence within the royal family only fueled speculation. How would William and Harry respond to their father's shocking admission? How would this revelation reshape public perceptions of Charles, the crown, and the very institution he represented? Sources close to the princes described the profound emotional impact. William, now heir, struggled to balance his personal grief with the immense responsibility of preparing to lead a nation, the shadow of history pressing heavily upon him. Harry, already vocal about the pressures and shortcomings of royal life, found the confession reopening old wounds, stirring raw feelings that had never truly healed. Public concern for the two princes was immediate and intense, amplified by intimate recollections from Diana's friends and aides. One aide quietly observed, "She always said there were 3 people in the marriage. Now we see she was right all along." The confession sparked a broader debate about the monarchy itself. Could a centuries-old institution built on duty, decorum, and rigid tradition survive in a world increasingly demanding honesty and emotional transparency? Outside palace gates, protesters carried banners calling for love rather than obligation to guide royal relationships, even urging Charles to step aside in favor of William. Yet amid the anger and outrage, some saw potential for transformation. In his raw honesty, Charles had opened a door for the monarchy to evolve, embracing human vulnerability, acknowledging mistakes, and showing that even a king could err, feel regret, and finally speak the truth. This revelation did more than uncover a painful personal truth. It forced the world to confront the cost of duty, the weight of tradition, and the enduring power of love, loss, and legacy. For generations, the monarchy had stood as a symbol of order and perfection. Now, for the first time, it also stood as a reminder that even the most revered institutions are built on human hearts, fragile yet capable of honesty, growth, and redemption. Charles's shocking confession shook the world, sparking grief, reflection, and countless questions. But how will he respond to the public's reaction? And what might his response mean for the future of the monarchy? Now, let's explore a heartfelt apology that changes the monarchy forever. The apology and the future of the monarchy. After days of tense, hushed anticipation, Buckingham Palace finally announced that King Charles would address the nation once more. This time, the purpose was not to confess shocking truths, it was to apologize. Every detail of the occasion had been carefully arranged, yet the moment carried a weight far beyond ceremony or tradition. Cameras clicked, microphones hummed, and the world held its breath as Charles stepped forward, stripped of robes, crowns, and royal embellishments. For once, he was not a king performing duty. He was a man, vulnerable and human, speaking directly from his heart. "I owe this nation, and above all, my sons, an apology," he began, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "For far too long, I carried the truth in silence. I believed I was protecting the monarchy, protecting William and Harry, protecting myself, but in that silence, I only deepened the pain left behind by Diana's loss. To William and Harry, I am deeply sorry. You deserved an honest father and a mother whose marriage was filled with love, not duty. I failed you both. To the people who loved Diana, I regret that my actions and my silence caused so much hurt. Every word seemed to ripple across time, heavy with sorrow, humility, and reflection. Charles spoke not of tradition or protocol, but of human failings, the mistakes that had haunted him and the love he had failed to nurture. He praised Diana's extraordinary courage, generosity, and relentless selflessness, even as she navigated the suffocating constraints of royalty. "My regret, which will remain with me forever," he admitted, "is that I did not give her the love and peace she deserved. I should have spoken sooner. I should have been braver. I apologize for all that I am." The reactions from his sons revealed the deep personal impact. William, composed and thoughtful, acknowledged the painful truths without public condemnation, leaving space for healing over time. Harry, more candid and emotional, expressed raw disappointment and anger, revealing the irreparable strain on their mother's memory and their own lives. Across the nation, opinions were divided. Some saw a king finally embracing honesty and human imperfection. Others believed it was too little, too late. Candlelight vigils glimmered across streets, flowers overflowed memorials, and banners carried messages of sorrow and skepticism. Too little, too late. The monarchy found itself at a pivotal moment, teetering between centuries-old tradition and the demands of modern transparency. Advisors wrestled with difficult questions. How much truth could be shared without undermining royal authority? Could honesty coexist with the heavy weight of duty, ceremony, and secrecy that defined the crown? Or could revealing human flaws, showing that even kings can err and seek forgiveness, revitalize the institution, making it more relatable, resilient, and relevant to a world hungry for authenticity? Charles's words could not rewrite history. They could not erase the years lost or undo the pain left behind. Yet they marked a profound turning point. For the first time, the crown spoke not only of duty and inherited power, but also of regret, acknowledgement, and truth. "I cannot change what has been," Charles admitted, voice faltering, "but I can speak the truth now, and I can hope that in doing so, Diana's memory will live not just in sorrow but in honesty. That is the least she deserves, and the least I can give." As the cameras clicked and the applause lingered, subdued and respectful, the room gradually emptied. Yet his words resonated far beyond the palace walls. Diana's luminous story, radiant and enduring, outshone the crown itself, while King Charles, marked forever by the courage to speak honestly, ensured that the monarchy would never be quite the same. Tradition and secrecy had been pierced, and the human heart revealed at the very center of power. So what do you think about King Charles's apology following the shocking revelation? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.